Hey everybody, Douglas here from Rev Rides, here to teach you how to do a tire and tube change on your Begode RS. First thing you're going to need is a tire and a tube, if you need to replace the tube as well. Second, you're going to need a hammer and some sort of tap tool. I like to use an old pedal rod from an old wheel. Next, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver. Then you'll need a size 4 and size 5 millimeter Allen key. To remove the tire, you'll need some form of tire spoon or tire iron. You can find these on Amazon. Lastly, you need non-conductive silicone to seal the hall sensor wire for your motor in place at the end. Make sure you have a magnetic dish to keep all your screws organized. Loctite will be needed to ensure none of your screws vibrate loose. There are set screws on either side of the pedal that are a size 5 millimeter hex key. You're going to remove both of those on either side. And then you're going to take a tap tool and tap the pedal rod inside there out. Now that you've tapped out the pedal rod, you can remove the pedal and then do the same on the other side and then move on to the side panels. Now you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the side panels in your RS. Lastly, don't forget your 2 screws under here, under any padding you may have. Now that all your screws are removed, you should be able to just pop the side panel right off. If it's your first time removing the side panel, you might have some trouble as the battery is a little sticky. Go ahead and flip over your RS and do the same to the other side, removing the screws and popping off the side panel. Okay, now that we've removed our side panels on the RS, you're going to find your power cord directed between the battery and the controller. In some models of the RS, that may be under the left cover. Now go ahead and unplug the connector. Then we're going to power cycle the unit. Being sure your power cord is unplugged, power cycle the unit. Power cycling is the process of turning the wheel on and off. And do a second time. This is to be sure you drain the capacitors of any power that they may be holding onto. Grabbing your screwdriver again, we're going to remove the cover on your motherboard. If you have an earlier model, you won't have this cover. Now lightly move your cover up and set it to the side, as it can pull on some of these wires. Now that our controller is exposed, you want to unplug the phase wires and the hall sensor from your motor. But first, make sure you write down the orientation in which the phase wires are laid out on the motherboard, which is yellow, blue, then green, from left to right. And lightly twist back and forth and pull up to remove these wires. Then go ahead and remove your hall sensor. Now you're going to grab your size 4 Allen key to remove the pedal hanger screws on either side of your wheel. Now go ahead and flip it to the other side, making sure to put the control board cover back on your controller. If you don't have one, just make sure to set it down nice and soft. Now we're removing the pedal hanger screws from the opposite side of the wheel. Afterwards, we'll remove the motor. Now that we've got our pedal hanger screws removed from either side, you're going to lift the shell off of the motor. Be careful pushing your motor wires out, as you don't want them getting cut. Now, you don't need a stand to do this. You can just do this on the ground. Now we're going to deflate the tire, unless your tube is already flat, in which case you can just go ahead and start removing your tire. Now we need our tire iron. Very carefully, you're going to put your tire spoons or irons into the side of the tire, trying not to pinch the tube. Once you get the tire about halfway off, you can usually do the rest by hand. Now, if you're just replacing the tube, you're going to stop here and just remove the tube and then replace it. If you're replacing your whole tire, first remove the tube and then remove the tire itself. To do this, I'm lightly pulling up on the back side and peeling it off slowly. Now with your new tire, be sure that the rotation on the tire lines up with the rotation in which you're putting it on the motor. First, we're going to pop the bottom half of the tire onto the rim. To do this, sometimes you can press it on, and you may need to use your tire tools to get it on the rest of the way. Now that the first half of our tire is done, we're going to grab the tube and put that back inside the tire. Be sure that the valve is facing up on the same side as the motor wires, as that's the side you will need to fill it from. First, get the tube completely inside the tire and then line the valve up with its hole. This part can be a little tricky, so just try and line it up best you can. Now be sure your tube is completely inside the rim and the tire. And then we're going to use tire irons to get the tire back on. Again, be careful not to pinch the tube when putting the tire spoons into the tire. This is easier with 2 people, but can be done with 1. Now that your tire is on, you're going to line up the bead around the tire evenly around the rim. And you can air it up and deflate the tire and move it around to try and get it perfect. What this is going to do is make sure that there's no wobble in the tire when it is inflated. Now that it's about even, we're going to go ahead and try and air up our tire to make sure we didn't get any flats. Be sure to check your tire for what PSI it needs to be pumped up to. Each tire will be different. I recommend slightly above the rated PSI, as all of our weight is on 1 tire as opposed to 2. Now we're going to put our tire and motor back into the wheel. Now when sliding this on, it helps to have 2 people, as you do have to fidget your wires back through this little hole. Once you have all the wires through, grab them all together and pull them up nice and straight. Slide your wheel down. Now you're ready to tighten the pedal hangers back on. Now we're going to use some Loctite on our pedal hanger screws before we put them back in. Now you only need a small drop. Not a lot is needed. Then using your 4mm hex key, tighten in the pedal hanger screws. And be sure to do this in a star formation so that you do not crack any of the plastics. Now that all of our pedal hanger screws are in, we're going to give them one last little quarter twist to ensure that they are all tight. While we're still on the side that does not have the controller, we're going to put the side panel back on. Then you're going to grab your screwdriver again and start tightening back in your screws. I recommend doing corners and then sides. Always when tightening these wheels back up, be sure not to over tighten any screws as you may crack the plastic. Don't forget these two screws that may be covered up by some padding you may have. Now we're going to put our pedal back on the wheel. To be sure you have the right side, the taller end of the pedal should be towards the back of the wheel. There will be a slight slant in the pedal. We replaced the pedals here because there was a large crack in the stock pedal. This is just a reminder to be sure to keep up on your parts and always be checking them. Now, to put the pedal on, you'll first just want your pedal rod and your washers. Slide the pedal rod through the pedal, lifting up on top of the pedal hanger. Slide your washer onto the pedal rod, bringing it back down. Slide the pedal rod through the pedal hanger. Then, while holding onto the washer, you're going to lightly push the rod so it can grab onto the washer. Now, pushing the washer down, keep putting force onto the pedal rod so it slides through the washer as it falls. Now try to push the pedal rod evenly on both sides. Now before putting your pedal screws back in, be sure to add some extra Loctite onto them. Always be sure you're not forcing your screws in, as you can cross thread or even break screws. You want to make sure your pedal screws are tightened evenly on both sides. Once tightened, give one last firm tightening. We're done with this side. We're going to flip it back over to the controller side and finish putting everything back together. Now that we're back on the controller side, let's put some Loctite on our pedal screws and get those into place. Now grabbing your size 4 Allen key, tighten in your pedal screws in a star formation to be sure not to crack any plastics. Now go through and tighten each one down snugly. Now using our guide on top of the battery here, we're going to plug back in the motor wires in sequence: yellow, blue, green, left to right. First, the yellow phase wire, and then its cover. Then the blue phase wire, and then its cover. Third, the green wire, and its cover. Lastly, plug your hall sensor back into the controller. Now we need silicone for the hall sensor wire on the motor to be sure it doesn't come loose from vibration. Now add just a drop of silicone to be sure that our wires don't come loose. This will dry sometime after closing the wheel up. Next, you're going to put the cover back on the motherboard if you have one. Now grab the 4 screws you removed from the casing earlier and screw the casing back in. Next, if you have a little motor wire cover piece, going to silicone this with just a thin layer of silicone and put it back into place. Next, you're going to plug your wheel back together. There will be a light pop noise. Then be sure that the power wire is set out of the way, and we're going to put our side panel back on and then the pedal. Now that you've plugged in the power wire, you're going to put on the side panel. Last 2 side panel screws, again, under any padding you may have, right in the middle of the shell. Now we're going to throw our last pedal on. And same process, slide the pedal rod through, put a washer on, then slide the pedal rod through the pedal hanger. As soon as you can see the rod on the other side, you're going to put the washer in, and then push your pedal rod in, trying to line it up with the washer. Now we're going to tap the pedal rod in evenly on both sides. Now grab your Loctite and put just a drop. Oh yeah, let's not forget this cover. Now you know how to change the tire and tube on your Begode RS. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you want more riding and repair videos. Come ride with us.